If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
2000s. This is the first matchup between the Knicks and Heat this season. The Heat earned a hard-fought win over the Cavs in Cleveland Tuesday night. Then win moved Miami 2 games ahead of New York for the 6th seed in the East as the important spot. That is the final spot that avoids the play-in tournament. So, Tommy, how does New York stack up with Miami in this one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Miami coming off, they started out the season slowly, but playing much better of late. Won 4 of their last 5. Their one slip up was a bad loss to the Hornets, but have recently beaten the Pelicans, the Celtics, the Magic, who are playing a lot better of late. And they're, so they were in the middle of a road trip, but you basically know what you're going to get, from Miami, a well-coached team. Coach Spo was going to have his team prepared. Jimmy Butler's, we've seen him play at an extremely high level for a long time. Tyler Hero's having the best season of his career. Bam Adebayo, we mentioned how Sims, would need to step up against Anthony Davis against the Lakers and failed to do so. Bam's another nightmare matchup for any big in the NBA. Sims is a little more suited to deal with the physicality that Bam brings to the table, as opposed to the agility and long-range shooting that AD relies on. So it's a bit of a better matchup. But given how many minutes Hartenstein logged on Tuesday, they need Sims to at least hold his own. Sims was minus 16 in the 13 minutes he played Tuesday night, which was, just backbreaking. A deep team. Oladipo gives you some offensive off the bench. Gabe Vincent, Strus. You basically know what the Heat are going to do. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to compete defensively. Basically play efficient offensive basketball. And the Knicks need to get back on track. Another home game. Knicks are 2 games below 500 at home this season. It looked like they'd making some progress. Now another step back. The other thing I think it's worth noting with Miami, the Heat's impressive victory in Cleveland last night, coupled with the Knicks loss, means the Knicks are now 2 games back, as of Miami. These 2 teams play each other 4 times over the next 2 months. I think looking at the big picture, in order to, if the Knicks have any hope of climbing into that 6th seed from their 7th spot right now, they probably have to win 3 of those 4 games, because if you don't, then you don't have the tiebreaker. And again, just in terms of, those games are basically count as 2 games in the standings. So these games take on added importance. You don't want to look too far ahead. Knicks still have to survive without Mitchell Robinson, get to the All-Star break, etc. But again, if you do have designs on capturing that 6th seed, these games take on added importance.
Yeah, this one's a big one. And that's why the Knicks are going to have to really turn the page from what was another big game on Tuesday. It's TNT, it's LeBron James. He's chasing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So there's a lot of attention to that game. But as far as the standings go and anything like that, the Lakers are in the West. They're not a championship team or anything like that. Really this one is a game that you really have to make sure you're clued in. So one, you can't have these bad first quarters, as you mentioned, and 2 in a row, and just 2 games in a row where I just thought it was overall kind of just uninspired play. I just felt like watching those past 2 games, there were long stretches where they couldn't get any stops. Then there's long stretches where they can't score. I mean, the Lakers made their first 9 shots, I think, in the 4th quarter. It was insane. The Knicks were lucky to be in the game because they kept scoring. But and in the Nets game, they go long stretches where they can't score. And then at the end of the game, when they are scoring, they can't stop Kyrie.
100%. One quick note on the Lakers game, which is crazy. The one bucket Obi Toppin had, who again played less than 10 minutes, and again it looks more clear by the day that the Knicks, I think they really should seriously consider trading him before next week's deadline, because he doesn't have a place in the Knicks rotation. If Tibbs and Randall are here, I just don't see how he gets to, he needs to get to 12 first before he gets to 15, let alone 20. It just doesn't, he's a non-factor. And if you have invested an 8th overall pick in someone who doesn't contribute on a consistent basis, you have to reassess, prioritize, different, and then you have, the rest of the guys playing 40 plus minutes because you don't have any wing depth. There's a lot there. I say that to say this: Obi's lone bucket was a 3-pointer with about 2:30 left in the 3rd quarter. That was the last 3-pointer the Knicks made. They went 0 of 10 from behind the arc in the fourth quarter and overtime and at the end of the third. You can't win NBA games that way. So shot making needs to improve. But yes, that's something, you talk about the stretches that you can't allow the offensive stagnation. And the other thing is the Knicks were, I think they were favored in Brooklyn. I know they were favored by 1.5 last night. I don't know when the Knicks are going to be favored again. As I noted, you got the Heat, then you got the Clippers on Saturday. Who knows what Kawhi and Paul George and those guys, but then you got the Sixers. Again, 12 of the next 14 teams are at 500 or have a winning record. The only two teams that don't have a winning record are the Magic, who are playing much better of late, and the Wizards, who have won 6 in a row. So there are not many easy games in the schedule. That's why these last two losses, as you know, that they didn't come out and play inspired basketball really sting, because there are not many games you can check off as winnable contests going forward.
And you can't play that kind of uninspired ball against a team like Miami, a team that's very detail oriented, a team that always comes out and plays hard, a team that is not going to beat themselves. A team that is going to play at a certain level. Like they may not always play at a 10, but you're going to get a 7 or 8 every time. So that your C game is never going to beat Miami. Your B- game is probably never going to beat Miami. You need a B+ to an A every time you play against Miami in order to win. So the Knicks are going to have to play a lot better than what we've seen in the last 2 games. How do you feel like at this point? You mentioned, the fact that they're 2 games back. They have these 4 games with Miami. It's not early in the season anymore. We can't keep saying that. Now we're past the midway point. We're in kind of the thick of it now. At this point in the season, do you still feel like it is realistic to suggest that Miami could, the Knicks could catch Miami for that 6th spot? Like the way it's shaking out, it seems like those top 5 teams are pretty much set. Maybe someone could argue that Cleveland falls to 6, but I think most likely you're looking at Miami in that 6th spot. So it's really, this is the team you're chasing. You're going to be chasing this team probably the rest of the way. Do you feel like the Knicks, based on what you've seen, have a realistic shot to get to that 6th spot? Or do you feel like a trade is going to have to happen for them to catch Miami?
Yeah, I don't see it status quo. Again, the Heat are trending in the right direction. Knicks are at best plateauing, and I think we can. There's a dip on the horizon. This season has been so weird that I feel foolish, prognosticating anything at this point. But I certainly think there's a much greater chance that the Knicks slip to 7 or 8, 8 or 9 than they do jump up to 6. Again, as the top 4 teams are locked in. The 5th, again, the Cavs could, something weird could go on. You get an injury. Again, obviously injuries can change anything. But again, Miami with the 2-game lead, the Knicks another, 7 or 8 games without Mitchell Robinson. Their players, again, another overtime game last night, which, you got 42 minutes for Brunson and 44 for Rand. These minutes are going to start to wear down. We'll see how they can kind of handle it. If there's a trade that they bring some guys in, does RJ kind of turn things around? That'll obviously be important. I think the Knicks have shown enough fight. And even when times get dark and the 5-game losing streak and then the 4-game losing streak, they bounce back with some really impressive wins. That kind of buoys the floor and, that won't allow them to sink too far. But I think I don't want to say unrealistic, but I think it's certainly less than 50% chance that they do catch Miami, given the talent on the Miami sideline, the coaching staff. But if they are going to catch Miami, these head-to-head matchups will be critical in that race. So I guess we'll reassess it later in the week on our next pod. But especially if they lose this game, full 3 games behind, and are behind in the tiebreaker situation, it's difficult to envision New York making the leap back into that coveted 6th spot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough sledding for New York. I really do. I think that Miami is a team that typically they do this, maybe early in the season, midway point in the season, they're kind of, slugging through, knowing that they kind of have, a bigger picture at the end where, you need a title. When you get to this point and you're playing Miami at this point in the season, I just don't think you're going to get a lot of gimmies from them. Like I said, they play at a constant 7 or 8 every time. You're not going to get a 3 out of Miami. So, in order for them to catch them, that Miami's, they get as an A, beat up on Miami in these 4 games, which I don't think it's not gonna be easy. Could they split? Maybe, but then you're still even. And two, Miami has to really fall in some major trouble with the rest of their schedule. I don't have the rest of the schedule in front of me, so I'm not sure whether it's difficult or easy. But again, knowing kind of Miami and their attention to detail and knowing how important it is to stay out of that play-in, it would shock me if they just fell apart at parts in the season and went on a 5-6 game loser streak that allowed Knicks to get back into that 6th spot. So it's going to be tough, especially not having Mitchell Robinson for you assuming like another month. Like it's going to be real tough for the Knicks. Again, of course, I'm hoping that they can find a way to get it done, but I think that's why it's going to be crucial for the Knicks when they get to this trade deadline, we will talk about soon. Like they got to decide like how important is this 6th seed thing? Like,
yeah,
we know it's important, obviously, just in the sense like you won't want to play in the play-in, you want to make the playoffs, but like, are you making a trade just to catch Miami? Because that's essentially, to me, what you would be doing if you're talking about making a major trade this trade deadline. Now, you could say, well, the building block you may get will be good down the line. That is true, but I just think you want to be wary of watching that loss from the Laker game and say, okay, now we have to give up that another pick for OG Anunoby because we're 2 games back of the Heat. Like I would be very cautious of thinking that way. One, you still might not catch him, and 2, how important is getting a 6th seed in this one season when you're trying to build towards a championship.
totally. Just to follow up on that, Knicks have the 3rd toughest remaining strength of schedule.
Yep.
All teams in the NBA. Miami is 12th, so kind of near the middle of pack. But yeah, as we know, Knicks 4 more games against the Heat, 2 more games against the Celtics, 2 more games against the 76ers, 2 more games against the Nets. Those are difficult matchups against. They haven't really played the cream of the crop in the East. There's still a lot of games left against those top teams, and that's the Nets with KD most likely, and if the Sixers stay healthy, so certainly something to keep an eye on.
Knicks Heat Thursday, 7:30, back on regular MSG network. So for those that were growing tired of the national broadcast, at ease, Clyde Frazier will be back. I'm not sure if Mike Breen will be back. He should be, actually, because it's Thursday game. So you should have Breen and Clyde back on Thursday. So fun for Knicks fans there. But let's